Hello, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to anti-haul number 6. Oh my gosh, you guys, I am so excited to film today's anti-haul. I haven't made one of these in a bit and I am just ready to go. I have, as usual, I'm not going to lift it up because it's all the way down on the ground and then I'd have to lift it really high and I'm not that strong. But I have a laundry basket full of decks to share with you guys today, things that I love. If you are new to my anti-hauls, let me give you the little rundown and a few disclaimers about how it all works. So my tarot anti-hauls are tarot and oracle decks that I have decided not to purchase, and usually a couple that I regret purchasing. And the way that I like to approach this topic is I like to share with you guys the things that I don't think are going to resonate with me, the things that I've decided not to pick up. And I do that because I think we get a lot of hype in the YouTube community around any kind of commodity or thing that we buy, right? Whether it's art, books, tarot, makeup, doesn't matter. There's a lot of stuff about what you should buy or what you want to buy. And I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. A lot of people have commented on my anti-hauls that they find things that they love and want to buy even from these videos. But I like to share with you a little bit about how I make mindful decisions about what's going to come into my collection, what might be leaving my collection, and all that kind of thing, because I think that's helpful as far as a balance for my own life, let alone for other people. A few disclaimers. I like to keep things positive. That is sort of the way that I am. I like to approach this topic based on what works for me, and I like to be very, very clear that I respect and admire any artist who puts their creation out into the world. I think that takes a lot of guts. I think that it is really spectacular when people do that, and I appreciate the heck out of all of our creators. So I always like to make sure that I leave a bit of a disclaimer here to keep it kind, especially in the comments when we think of our creators, because they often view and engage with these videos, and I think it's helpful for them to see that we respect their work even if it doesn't jive with us or it's not for us. So I like to keep it focused on like why it's not for me personally, etc. So hopefully that is clear, but without further ado, we're going to get right into it. So the first category is decks that I regret purchasing. I hope you have a coffee, by the way, or a beverage, because this is going to be a long one. So I've got a couple decks in this category this time. And the first one, I'm gutted to admit both of these, to be completely honest, because I was so excited about both. So excited. So let me share the first one. I'm just waiting for gasps of alarm for both of these from you guys. Although I can't hear you, I can just imagine it. So the first one is the Glastonbury Tarot. So if you saw my haul from the Northwest Tarot Symposium this last year, I was over the moon to find a copy of this there. It was gently used and in really nice condition. Like whoever owned it probably didn't use it, but just had it. And I was really, really excited because I have a quite significant attachment to the landscape of Glastonbury. There's a whole story there, but it's related to some time I spent in a particular spiritual path and a lot of meaning that I took away from it. I haven't even really spent any time with the guidebook. I did try to spend, can we talk? Deck creators, I know this is an older deck, so people don't do this, creators and publishers don't do this as much anymore, but this is why we need solid areas for our cards to live in boxes, because they just get behind and under these trays. Anyways, so the cards themselves are really lovely. They're also really glossy. I'll try to keep the glare off of them, but this is what the backs look like. This was also a huge reason why I was over the moon for these cards, because look, they're so pretty. That is Glastonbury Tour. I'll tell you the biggest issue I had with this deck for me personally was that the minor arcana are very modern, such as we see here in this 10 of Cups. And all of the minor arcana is that way. But when we get into the major arcana, we get this more medieval kind of feel. Even in some of the court cards, there's a medieval feel to the cards. And I have to admit, that really threw me for a loop. I think I was expecting, and then here's the Knight of Swords. We have a knight in armor. It didn't really pick a lane. It didn't pick a lane between modern and sort of historical. We have the Fisher King for the Hanged Man. And then we have this person hiking in the Three of Staffs for honesty in like modern day clothing. We have the Lady Morgana for the High Priestess. And then we'll have Six of Cups. Couple making out, kind of modernish. I couldn't. I think it was ultimately the art. The art is a nice quality of artwork. It wasn't consistent enough for me. It didn't feel consistent enough. I loved the majors, but then the minors lost me, and I realized I just was not excited to work with or play with this deck. This deck is out of print. I am going to be rehoming it, hopefully to a good and loving home, because I think it's a really special deck. It's just definitely not meant for me. What I like to reach for instead, which I didn't mention in the intro, is the whole thing I do in these videos is I share what's not working, but then I share something that is working. What I like to reach for instead, and I'm actually really excited to own, and came out after I picked up this Glastonbury Tarot, is the Mists of Avalon Oracle. This is a Rockpool publishing deck. Beautifully produced. The box is really, really nice. And these cards, they give me everything I want from a Glastonbury landscape perspective, and I love the way the artwork is done. I'm trying to keep the glare off from my light here. But you have these beautiful scenes. There's wonderful keywords on these cards. Sorry, I have to show them at just a bit of an angle. There we go. These are so, so beautiful. And they are definitely what I am enjoying reaching for when I want that sort of Avalon or Arthurian vibe. This deck also pairs and looks really beautiful next to Arthurian tarot decks. So there's that to consider as well, because I tried to work with the Glastonbury Tarot next to the Arthurian Tarot and they felt so clashy. It didn't work. These, although the artwork is not the same as decks like the Arthurian Tarot, they stay in the same kind of time period, which really, really helps me. So that is that one. Another deck that I regret purchasing, and I mean, I hate the name of this category actually now that I think about it, because I don't actually hate that I purchased these. I'm glad that I purchased them and took the time to get to know them to decide if they would work for me or not. This one comes about as part of a whole series of synchronicities I was experiencing in my spiritual practice, and it was meaningful for that reason. And it was meaningful because of the timing. I actually stumbled and kind of fell into this deck around the time that my father died. And I don't know, there was something about this that spoke to me. And by all rights, I should just show this, but by all rights, I should love, love, love this deck. And on one hand, I do. But this is the Mermaid Tarot by Lisa Robertson. This deck is stunning. It is in a beautiful, like, magnetic opening box by Llewellyn. It's got one of Llewellyn's newer, full-color, gorgeous guidebooks that smells incredible. These guidebooks, oh my god, I cannot get enough of the way they smell. Okay, whoever I end up passing this on to is going to be super creeped out that I had my nose in their book. But this deck is so beautiful. It's very, very well thought out. It's well done. I just realized I didn't put something away, and that's going to make me crazy, because I have issues with these things. So I'm just going to put my Mists of Avalon Tarot back in its box. Anyway, so the Mermaid Tarot, let me just lift the cards out. So these have, as you can tell the difference, these have a tray that's solid so the cards can't get lost in there. I edged this deck, as you can see, in all these multiple shades of blues and greens to match the beautiful backings. Everything about this deck is absolutely stunning. The artwork is gorgeous. It's got a very sort of Disney movie feel, which I've talked about before. That is Mama Yamaya there in the Empress card. I absolutely, I love this Lover's card. It's also one of the things that made me want to buy this deck, because it shows somebody and her looking at herself, basically a different version of herself. But that to me is such a beautiful way to express the Lover's card. The elements are done very, very well. So in spite of it being a watery deck, you get very fiery wands. There's this very lava Hawaii kind of feel to those cards. We have Pele as the Queen of Wands. I mean, it's a very well thought out deck. The swords are very wintry and icy. Ten of Swords. It's so well done. And then the earthly cards, the Pentacles cards, are surrounded with lots of lush greenery and foresty, like trees and things like that. You get a lot of land and earth in that deck. So it's, or in that suit. It's really beautifully done. It's really, really beautifully done. It would be absolutely fantastic as a beginner deck for somebody. What I found, though, is that there was something about that Disney feel. I just wasn't reaching for it, which is hilarious because I am a big child and I love Disney movies. So I can't figure out exactly where the disconnect is for me in this, because it is so perfect and so pretty, but it just was not something I ever felt called to reach for. Even when I had it designated for my spiritual practice, I still wasn't reaching for it. I can't quite completely place it. And then I was talking to my friend about rehoming this deck, and she was like, what are you thinking? Like, you love that deck. And I was like, I know. So I got it back out, and what I did is I sat down with the deck and I actually divided the cards up between cards I really love, cards I'm not so sure about, and then cards that are kind of meh in between. And the cards that I truly loved were actually a fairly small percentage of the deck, just for how they depicted the meanings of the cards. And this, you guys, comes down completely to personal taste and what jumps out at you from specific types of artwork. It's totally subjective. You can't, no artist could potentially nail that for everybody. It literally isn't possible. So I just realized that most of the cards in here, as much as I loved them and I love the concept and I love the style of artwork, I love all of it, there was just too many cards in there that didn't depict the meaning the way that, in a way that I wanted it to. Does that make sense? So ultimately, I've decided to pass that deck along because I'm just not reaching for it. In its place, I have been loving, oh, I have to reach down really far to get my decks. Okay. I have been loving the Mermaid Tarot. This is the Dame Darcy Mermaid Tarot. Now this one actually is way less watery and by all rights, way less my art style. The aesthetics of this deck are gorgeous. It's got this beautiful matte gilding. It's a really luscious, buttery, smooth matte cardstock. I absolutely love the way these cards are depicted. I have not managed to have an unpleasant time ever with this deck. Every time I pull readings, pull cards and do readings with this deck, I get wonderful reads. Intuitively, I feel very connected to this deck. I don't know if it's the vintagey, hand-drawn style to the artwork. I don't know what it is. I really can't place it, but I freaking love this deck. I love it so much, and I always want to reach for it. I always want to use it, and that to me is one of the things that determines for me whether a deck is working for me or not, is how much am I excited to reach for it? How much do I want to reach for it? And to me, that is like the #1 deciding factor. So that is it for decks that I regret purchasing for this particular anti-haul. Also, if I haven't mentioned it yet, it is really hot where I live right now. And by really hot, I mean it's all subjective. But it's like 28, 30 degrees outside Celsius, and that's pretty warm for me. So I have a fan going. If you can hear that, I'm sorry. But not sorry because I'm also not going to die to make this video for you. How dramatic was that? I'm not going to die for you. I'm ridiculous. Also, I need more coffee, clearly, in my life. So our next category is decks that are currently available in the mass market that I'm not going to buy. So of the mass market decks that are currently available that I'm not going to buy, there are several that I kind of want to buy, but I've ultimately decided not to. And as always, yet another disclaimer, I completely reserve the right to change my mind. I have backpedaled on anti-hauled items before, so never take my word as gospel at any point on this channel, because I might love a deck and ultimately decide that it's not for me. I might not want a deck and then later on connect with it for some reason or feel drawn to it for some reason. So I mean, grain of salt and all with all of this, but Legendary Ladies. So I will put some images up somewhere, wherever I have more room, on the screen here so that you can see it. Okay, this is another, like, giving me major Disney vibes, giving me modern goddess excited vibes. I really love this deck in theory. And I got real excited, and it almost made it onto a Say Yes to the Deck episode. It might have actually even made it onto, I think it maybe made it onto a Say Yes to the Deck episode, but my memory is terrible, so I can't be sure. And I really like this. I love the wide range of goddesses and divine feminine figures that are featured throughout the deck. I love the variety of divine feminine characters and archetypes and goddesses that are in the deck. I love that it calls itself Legendary Ladies, because some of these divine feminine archetypes are not goddesses, and lumping them all together like that can be problematic and has been problematic for people before. So I love that. I love the art style. I love that vectorized kind of crisp art style. It's something I'm constantly drawn to. And even more than just the fact that the deck itself is beautiful. And can we talk about the tall skinny cards, because they are tall and skinny and I love that. But also there's a guidebook not a guidebook. There is a book that is separate by the same name, Legendary Ladies, and it has some of the figures that are featured in the cards in the book. I almost bought them both. Like, I got really excited because y'all, I love me some good divine feminine energy. But what I have discovered over the past several years is that I'm very, very picky about divine feminine decks, and even ones that I bond with for a while. There's only one, has been so far, only one forever divine feminine deck for me, and that one is my beloved Goddess Oracle by Sophia Marashinsky and Harana Janto. So the backings look like this. Someday I'm going to trim this. I keep meaning to. I've seen people trim the sides and the tops off these cards, and I love the way they come out. But you guys, I absolutely love this deck. And not only do I love the deck, but I really love the book that comes with this deck. It has really helpful messages, really beautiful incantations to each, at least that's how I see them, to each one of these figures. I love this art style. It feels diverse in the way that the different goddesses or divine feminine figures here are represented. I've just loved this deck for too long and been attached to it and kind of bonded with it for too long to really give many other decks a fair shake. While I'm drawn to others because they may have different ones included that are not in this deck, I just always come back to this one. And I also find that as I have bonded, I hope I didn't smack the microphone. Hopefully. Anyway, as I have bonded with one particular matron, sort of divine feminine figure in my personal spiritual practice, I found that I'm drawn to work less with these varied decks featuring a number of different divine feminine figures, because I kind of feel, I don't feel like I'm cheating on my matron. This sounds really strange to say it that way, but I'm so focused on one relationship right now in a deity sense that I just don't feel drawn to pull from like a deck like this very often anyway. So I definitely don't feel like I need another one in my life. Wow, you guys, we're 17 minutes in and I've only covered a few decks so far. So we're going to try to pick up the pace. Wish me luck. Have a sip of your beverage. Maybe grab a snack or a blanket. You might need it. So the next one I want to talk about is the Everyday Witch Oracle. And again, I will pop up photos. So I am head over heels in love with my Everyday Witch Tarot by Deborah Blake and Elizabeth Alden. And when I found out that the Everyday Witch Oracle was in progress, I rapidly followed the artist on Instagram. I was there watching every image come into being, come into creation. And then it came out, and I don't know why, but I just was not drawn to the Oracle deck. And I am very much a gotta catch 'em all kind of personality. I love it when there is a companion Oracle to a tarot deck. My matchy heart loves when I have a tarot and oracle deck that are by the same artist and creator. I love it. But for some reason I wasn't drawn to pick up the Everyday Witch Oracle, and I couldn't figure out exactly what the barrier was. I've watched some walkthroughs and some reviews. Juliet Peekaboo Rose had a really wonderful one, which if I remember I will link in the description box down below, where she talked about the Everyday Witch Oracle and about ultimately rehoming it, and she absolutely loves this deck too. So I think she probably nailed what it is. For me, I think a lot of it was just there's a system, but I don't really feel like the system is represented in the artwork as well as it would need to be for me to connect to the system. If the system didn't exist and I didn't know it existed, it wouldn't bother me, but because I know it exists and I don't see it, you know what I mean? It's one of those kind of things. And then also, I felt like some of the keywords or some of the titles, they just weren't hitting for me, and I'm not sure why, totally subjective. But I never did scoop it up. And I mean, I wobbled on that one a lot because I just wasn't really sure what it was. But recently, an Oracle deck came out that I think aesthetically works beautifully with the Everyday Witch Tarot. It has a similar sort of energy to it. It's by a totally different artist and creator. Oh boy, guys, dipping into this basket all video, fun times. I haven't actually even put the strings on the bag for this deck yet because it's just recently found a home. But this is the Believe in Your Own Magic Oracle deck. Y'all, this is by Amanda Lovelace, and the artist is Janena Medeiros. These backings are everything with the crown because this deck is very much about sovereignty and self-worth and body diversity, and it is a stunner of a deck, and you can tell with the stripy socks and the pointy hats, we do have some correlation, I think, with that Everyday Witch Tarot. There's some good vibes, and the art style I think is really compatible to work. Okay, now that I said pointy hats, none are going to come up. That's just the way that it is. But beautiful matte cardstock, wonderful oracle, and I think this works. Now I need to find another pointy hat. Here we go. Here's another pointy hat. I think this deck just works really, really well with the Everyday Witch Tarot. And this one is completely my jam. And I don't have any other decks in my collection right now with as much curvy bodies, like Fat Girl Love, like Magic. I love this. I love this deck. And I love the theme of this deck. And I do love Amanda Lovelace's poetry book. The Princess Saves Herself in this one. I haven't read her others, but yeah, again, I still need to put my strings in my bag. This is one of Peggy's new divided bags, and I snarked one before it got strung for myself because I'm a greedy girl, and that's what I do. So that is that one. Another mass market deck that I am not going to buy is Colette Baron Reed and Jenna De La Grottaglia's latest collaboration deck, and it is one of their latest. I'm sure they've got more in the works, but it's called the Crystal Spirits Oracle. And I watched this one as soon as I found out it was coming out. I put it on my watch list on Amazon, which I keep a list of like decks that are in pre-order status so that I can watch for more artwork to be released and see what I think. And I really, really waffled because, again, I tend to like the artwork that those two do together, and I keep wanting a new one to wow me, and it just didn't. It just didn't. There were like faces in the crystals. It was essentially a crystal oracle deck. Again, I'll have some photos somewhere. But it's like a crystal oracle deck, but there's like some faces in the crystals. I think it's meant to sort of embody that spirit within the crystal, which I think is beautiful as a message. But something about it wasn't hitting home, and I can be also strangely picky about crystal decks. There's only been one so far that I've really bonded well with, and it's because it's more of a informative like book in a deck form than it is meant to be like an oracle deck, although it can be. And that is, oh, leaning way over, the Crystals the Stone deck. So I've talked about this deck a bunch on my channel before because it's my only crystal deck. It was really affordable. Its US recommended price is $16.95. Like, it's not expensive. The cards come out in a drawer style like this. There's no real guidebook. There is a little booklet in here about crystals, but nothing about like the individual ones. What I love about this deck, for starters, is it just focuses on photographs of the crystals. Now, this is great both from an identifying crystals standpoint, but also just from a connecting to what a crystal is actually like standpoint. Really beautiful, bright white backgrounds, true to color crystals. These are just great. And there's like 78 of them in here, so there's a ton. And I absolutely love this as a reference tool. Oh, I landed on labradorite. So pretty. The other neat thing is that when you're looking for a crystal in this deck, the backings are all sort of color-coded to the color of the crystal you're looking for. So it's like, oh, I'm looking for carnelian. And look, there's carnelian because it's that dark orange. That's the carnelian. So it's actually really easy to search through here and find the crystals you're looking for. I find that if I want to work with a crystal's energy or bring it into a spell or bring it into a reading, I can actually pull these cards in because I feel like they do such a beautiful job of holding that idea of that crystal. And I haven't yet found an oracle deck that does this better. Like, this is Sapphire. How beautiful is that? Like, they're really, really well done. Now, I think this was originally based on an app, but I think it was only an iPhone app. The nice thing is that the back obviously has all the information, well, not all, but it's got a decent amount of information about each crystal. So you get what the crystal is, who needs it, where to put it, and when to use it. And it's written very plain speak. Like, whenever I want to talk about plain speak, I reference Melissa Sanova's Kitchen Table Tarot. I also write in that similar style, and in that I try to write like I talk, like write like conversationally. That's how this is written. And then at the bottom there is a little message. So if you wanted to use this like an oracle deck, you totally could. So for Amber, it says recharge your good vibes. For Astrophyllite, it says unlock your highest potential. Sapphire, find your tranquil place. So there are messages you could totally use. My nose is so itchy. You could totally use this like a oracle deck. I just don't. I tend to use it more like a reference deck or to hold the energy of a particular crystal for a particular purpose. And I love it for that. And it was affordable. It was wonderful. It's in a nice sturdy like box with this drawer, and the drawer doesn't slide out when you pick up the deck, at least not much. So it's really, I love this. I love that. Okay. So that is it for mass market decks currently available that I'm not going to buy. So let's talk now about indie decks that are currently available that I'm not going to buy. So the first one of these is the Shimmering Veil Tarot. So I'll put some pictures up above. The Shimmering Veil Tarot by Celia Conway looks absolutely gorgeous. She was the creator of a deck called the Intuitive Tarot that was wildly popular. The Shimmering Veil of the two actually is the most appealing to me, and I could see myself potentially changing my mind on this in the future, but hard to say. In any case, I just found like while the artwork was beautiful, it wasn't talking directly to me the way that I wanted it to, if that makes any sense at all. There's just something about it. It just wasn't quite landing. And I can't explain exactly why that is. I think it's important when you're making, my nose is so itchy. I think it's important when you're making these sorts of decisions to consider what is resonating for you, what works for you, what feels exciting to you to work with. But I will say that instead of working with that one, I am really drawn to working with another deep deck, my Mary L. Tarot, because I will say one thing that I've noticed, my necklace is going askew, one thing I've noticed about the Shimmering Veil Tarot is that it looks like it would be really great for those deep immersive readings, particularly spiritual readings or readings around past lives, things like that. And I love working with my Mary L. Tarot for that kind of work. This is my first edition. It's super glossy. I trimmed it myself. It was one of the first decks I trimmed. I added the symbols and things on it so I'd know which card was what, because this one definitely goes its own way. But I love this. Oh, well, that one's on the floor. I love this deck. And so when I'm thinking of decks that are like deep that I can do this kind of work with, if it can't go head to head with this deck, if it can't compete for my attention with this deck, I'm probably not going to pick it up. So that's just sort of how it works for me and how I pick things. Picking up that dropped card because... Okay, so that's it for that one. Another mass market deck, that, or excuse me, indie deck that's currently available right now that I'm not going to buy is Shuffle Tarot Edition 1 and 2. So I will put hopefully a couple photos up of that one so you can get an idea of what this is doing. This is such a fun, cool concept, and if you like decks like the Before Tarot, the After Tarot, and there's one other one that looks at different perspectives on the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot. So if you like the decks that sort of look at the Rider-Waite-Smith and then sort of ask the question, what would happen if right after this moment or right before this moment, thus the Before and After Tarot, or in the case of the Shuffle Tarot, what would happen if we put like the Empress card in the Fool card and like mashed them up together? So what the creator of Shuffle Tarot Edition 1 and Edition 2 has done is literally taken characters from one card and put them in another card, and another card scenery from the Rider-Waite-Smith, and sort of twisted and mushed everything all together. And in theory, I think that's super cool, and I enjoyed the heck out of looking at people walk through this deck, or these decks, since there's two of them. However, it made my brain hurt because there's a reason, I guess to me, there's a reason why the different characters are in different environments, and that's a huge part of their meaning and what they're all about for me. And I just couldn't make the mental leap to go from to mix all of that up. Like, I can definitely look at what would happen to the characters before or after, because that to me is a lot like path working. But this just kind of jumbling them up, I'm way too organized in my head, I guess, for that to make sense to me. But I do think it's really cool. So what I love instead, this was so easy. What I love instead is my classic Rider-Waite-Smith Centennial, because in this version, everything is right in the world again. The Fool is in the Fool, the Magician is in the Magician, the High Priestess is in the High Priestess, and the Empress is in the Empress's domain. And I can't deal. By the way, this is my favorite version of the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot. I had this one, and I also had the Radiant Wise Spirit, which is pretty, but it's glossy. And I keep just coming back to this one. So this is my favorite. I have the full size and I have the tinned version. I love the Rider-Waite-Smith, and the Centennial Edition is the one that speaks to me. I have yet to feel a real desire to get more than one coloration edition year publishing of the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot. The Centennial works for me, and I'm good to go. Oh my gosh, my nose is so itchy. That is that. Okay. So lastly, in currently available independent decks that I'm not going to buy is the Fantastic Menagerie Tarot. And I clearly put this in the wrong category because I'm pretty sure you can't just go to Baba Studios and buy the Fantastic Menagerie right now. I think you can pre-order it right now, and maybe that's what I meant. But no, I should have put this in the pre-order. It doesn't matter. It's in the wrong category. We're just going to roll with it. That deck, I really enjoy all of my Baba Studios decks. I think they're beautifully produced, and I love the way that they have so much attention to detail and to quality. The aesthetics of working with a Baba Studios deck are wonderful, and I really enjoy them all. But the Fantastic Menagerie, I forget the artist's name. Oh man, I think I wrote it down. Did I write it down? J.J. Granville. I was never drawn to his art. It's kind of like anthropomorphized animals. Not necessarily something I have any kind of a problem with. It's just more that, like, it's kind of got this kind of silly children's storybook vibe to it, which I think is part of its charm. I just never felt drawn to it. So I'm not going to get a deck, especially a deck that's very expensive, based on artwork that I'm not particularly excited about or drawn to. However, one of my most recent, I think this is my most recent Baba Studios purchase, that I am head over heels in love with is my Mythical Creatures Tarot, the colored edition. This is probably my favorite Baba Studios deck. Well, it's hard to say because I love my Alice Tarot too, but this one, well, this one is, I guess, the closest to Fantastic Menagerie. It's got a storybook kind of feel to it because we have all these mythical creatures. The cold foil stamping on this particular deck is so beautiful, as it is with all of their decks. When they do this cold foil stamping, it's breathtaking, and it's subtle enough that cameras just don't really do it justice. You get it in your hands and you start shifting it in the light and you're like, oh my gosh, it's just so beautiful. I love this deck. I enjoy working with it. It is a pip deck, and it really looks at traditional Marseille meanings and positioning and that sort of thing. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And I am really content with what I have from Baba Studios. I don't think there's anything they've put out that I wish I had. So I don't feel like I need to jump on any of their upcoming reprints or anything like that. This one is like, this one and my Alice Tarot are my number ones. And my Bohemian Gothic I'm happy about. But anyway, I'm getting off track. Let's go back. So that is it for currently available independent decks that I'm not going to buy. Let's talk about mass market decks that are currently in pre-order status. I think these are all mass market. They may not be. These may be mass market or indie pre-ordered decks that I'm pretty sure I'm not going to pre-order, pretty sure I'm not going to buy. The first of these I want to talk about is the Edgar Allan Poe Tarot. Now, it's probably not going to come as a huge shock that I'm not necessarily a Poe person. I am vaguely familiar with like the Nevermore line from The Raven, I think is even the name of that poem. This is dreadful. I really know nothing. So because I know nothing, I'm not drawn to grab this deck. However, if you are a Poe fan or you are connected to that sort of theme, then you will probably love this because it looks like it's really well done. I will have pictures so you can see, but this one looks to me like it's going to be great. I'm not particularly drawn to Poe, so I don't feel the need to scoop this up and add it to my collection because it would be lost on me. It would be wasted on me, actually. But instead, and I'm going to look like a liar McLiar pants, instead I love my Bohemian Gothic Tarot from Baba Studio. Now, the reason I'm going to look like a liar McLiar pants is because I've been sharing with you guys my 2020 deck collection and declutter series, during which in my Dark and Shadowy deck episode, I talked about deciding it was okay to let this deck go. And I blame all of you because after I published that video, I got so many comments and messages from people going like if you're getting rid of it, I want it, but don't get rid of it. And I mean, even people that wanted it were trying to encourage me not to rehome it. And I was like, maybe I need to sit with this a little bit longer. So I sat with it a bit longer and I pulled it out and I looked through the images and I was like, you know what? I don't want to let it go. I don't want to let it go. So if you're not familiar, this one is also out of print. I think there is some talk of an upcoming reprint from Baba Studio, but I'm not sure about that. The world is, of course, Gothic. The artwork is very spectacular. This was the first Baba Studios deck that I ever purchased, and I loved the photorealism in this deck. There's something about the way this artwork is done that it's three-dimensional. It seems to pop off the card. It literally feels like you're looking almost out a window at these figures. It's so hyper-realistic. I don't know how to describe it, and that would normally be a bad thing to me. I don't normally like a lot of photorealism in my tarot, but this is so skillfully done. This is a wonderful deck for path working. I do enjoy working with it around the Halloween time. I am not ready to let it go. I don't know what I was thinking. Temporary insanity. Moment of confusion. Not knowing my own mind, for sure. Because as soon as people were like, are you sure? I was like, actually, no, I'm not sure. And sometimes what happens for me, and I'm here to validate that it is okay if this happens to you too. Sometimes what happens to me is I'm like, I'm okay. I can let this go. I can trade it. And then as soon as somebody expresses interest, I'm like, I'm not ready, which is usually a good sign that I should not let it go. I've had this happen with a number of decks, even decks that I have never felt drawn to work with, that I'm like, if I am not ready to let it go when someone expresses interest, if I feel possessive over it in that way, then it's not time. And that's okay. I can hold on to it and I can decide later, or I can keep it forever just because I love it and don't ever use it. That's not typically how my collection works, but I mean, I'm not saying that it's not something I would be willing to do. I am willing to do it. Okay, back on track. Currently in pre-order status also is the Beauty of Horror Tarot. Now, y'all know, as I mentioned with Edgar Allan Poe, I am not a horror fan. Well, that's not entirely true. I actually really love a good scary movie, but I don't like a lot of horror in my tarot. Dustin and Danny love to tease me about this, but no, I'm not a horror person. The only thing I have in my collection that even comes close, you know what, I'll get into that in a second. First of all, on this deck, I will say, there is something about the theme of this particular Beauty of Horror tarot that was just right on that line of like, do I love this? Because I feel like with things like this, I either love it or I'm like, nope. And this was right on that line, but the more cards that I looked at, I was like, it flipped over into nope territory. But it was pretty close because it kind of runs that line of like cheeky, playful, fun, funny horror, and then horror. And I just couldn't, it wasn't far enough over into the cheeky, funny category for me to be like, yes. And the only deck I've ever had that experience with is my beloved Zombie Tarot. Look at this bag. I gush about it every time I show this deck because in order for this bag to happen, first of all, I found this fabric and it was so perfect for the Zombie Tarot. And then I went to Peggy and I was like, okay, but I want this specific zombie on one side of my bag and this specific zombie on the other side of my bag. Can we make that happen, please? And the sizing was tricky and it was a big pain in the butt. And so she had to work really hard to make it for me. And I'm very grateful. Yeah. Anyway, the Zombie Tarot is such a fun, it's got this like 1950s kind of household, like sitcom feel to it. And it's funny, it's playful, but it's super skillful. The way that the scenes in this card in this deck depict the different meanings of the cards is brilliant. And it's so exciting and fun to play with because when you're doing readings, you're like, of course the cigarette vending machine is the devil. Hello. I mean, it's so perfect. One of my favorite cards in here, I don't know if I'll be able to find it, is the Seven of Swords. Because in the Seven of Swords, somebody's usually doing something a little sneaky, you know, a little sneaky sneak, or at least they're looking like they're doing a little sneaky sneak. And in this deck, you know the joke about how like in a zombie apocalypse, you don't need to be the fastest runner, you just need to be faster than somebody else kind of thing, because there's other ways to talk about that. But anyway, oh my gosh, it's going to be like the last card in this deck. The Seven of Swords shows a wife, I'm assuming a wife, who is kicking her husband down the stairs. There it is. Seven of Swords. This is so great. She's kicking her husband down the stairs into the horde of zombies to buy herself some time. Like, that's a shady move. But it's funny. So, anyway, there's a lot of brains and things like that in this deck, but I think the vintagey feel, the like 1950s sitcom vibe, it kind of makes me look at it more like B-grade horror and not like horror, so it doesn't seem scary to me. It just seems kind of like hilarious. So yeah, I love this deck. It is the one that I look the most forward to playing with every Halloween season. I don't tend to pull it out outside of the Halloween season because it just feels so themed and such, but man, I get the best readings off of this and I have so much fun working with this deck. Hands down, favorite Halloween themed deck of all time. So next up currently in pre-order status decks that I'm not going to buy is the White Newman Tarot. Now this deck looks really beautiful and it gave me a double take, let me tell you. I really want it on one hand. On the other hand, it's another sort of, I shouldn't say another because it's definitely got its own vibe, but it feels very much like a sacred approach to animals and nature, and I love decks like that so much. But I recently backed, and recently is subjective because it's been a bit now, but I backed the Oak, Ash, and Thorn Tarot that was a Kickstarter that I'm super excited about. And because I don't even have that one in my hands yet, I just don't feel like it makes sense for me to pre-order another kind of animal-y deck. I also recently looked at the, oh gosh, what's that dark one called? I can picture the box. Same creator as the Nocturna Oracle. Shoot, I can't remember the name. Somebody's gonna be yelling at the screen right now. But there's a darker themed animal deck. I was recently looking at that and I was like, I need that. And then I'm like, no, I need to wait and get Oak, Ash, and Thorn in my hands and work with that for a while before I bring in another animal deck. So that's actually the primary reason. I don't have it in my hands to show you, but that is the one I would reach for instead currently. And that is it for currently in pre-order status decks that I am not going to buy. Gosh, I feel like I still have a bunch more stuff to talk about. So next up, oh, that's right, because I have a whole other category. That explains it. So next up are Kickstarters that I didn't back. Kickstarter, you know, it's been easier for me in the recent, I would say year to year and a half to be a lot pickier about what I bring in or back on Kickstarter, because I feel like I've had enough Kickstarter experiences now that I understand what the experience as a buyer, or as a backer, I should say, is going to be like. I understand that things are going to take a long time. I understand that things are also going to be pretty expensive. And so now I back when I'm really passionate about getting something at that stage, or I really passionately want to back that project. So as an example, I backed Oak, Ash, and Thorn. I felt really strongly about that one. I put it in a Say Yes to the Deck episode. I really thought that purchase or that backing through. But lately it's been easier for me to say no. So it was actually hard for me to narrow this category down, actually. But there are three specifically that I want to talk about. The first one is The Faceted Garden by Claire Mack. Now you guys, I didn't grab it to show you, but it is right beside me. Aha! Look at that. This is the benefit to filming in this spot. I can actually grab things off the wall. So Claire Mack is the creator of the Illuminated Earth Oracle. And as most of you will know who have watched my channel for a bit, I love this oracle deck. It is one of my favorite independent oracles. It's got a lot of wonderful naturey vibes to it. The artwork is breathtaking, but this deck hits a certain sweet spot for me. It hits a sweet spot between art that lets my intuition have some room to roam, like in this destruction card, combined with keywords that give me so much to jump off of. And what I found about the tempest, like a tempest can be, is a type of storm, but it can mean so much. Evolution, resistance. These are big, expansive keywords. And what I found about the Faceted Garden was, oh, and I etched this deck in blue. Isn't it pretty? The Faceted Garden is beautiful. The artwork, you guys, it is stunning. If you love Claire Mack's artwork, you'll love the Faceted Garden. However, for me, one of the things that I love is the combination of this artwork with these keywords. And so I was really careful to look at that Kickstarter of the Faceted Garden and look at the keywords and see what I thought. And what I found was that in a lot of cases, I felt like the keywords were more titles, like what you're seeing in the card, as opposed to a theme or an idea or an archetype. And while I could still work with that, especially given that the artwork is so beautiful, I'm at a point where I like the combination of art and expansive keywords. That is sort of my sweet spot. Illuminated Earth totally hit that sweet spot, and Faceted Garden just didn't. So that one is definitely not for me. Now, I did love the garden plant kind of feel of that deck, that natural world feel. There is another deck that I was hoping to have in time to film this video, but I haven't received it at the time I'm filming. And I will be showing when I get it. It is the Vintage Botanical Oracle. I'm going to put a picture up somewhere so you can kind of get a feel for this deck. It is a huge oracle deck made up exclusively of botanical drawings and great keywords, and along with the name of the plant, right? So this was a deck I found out about a long time ago. The creator of this deck had compiled all of the images and put the keywords together and created all the graphic files and had made them free on her website for download. That website isn't available anymore. I believe, though, that somebody has found a way to get the images back using the Wayback Machine on the internet. I'll have more information on that when I show the deck when I get it. But what had happened is when those image files were available to load up into a site like Make Playing Cards, I had downloaded them and loaded them all up into Make Playing Cards and forgot about it for like a year and a half. And I was recently in Make Playing Cards and I spotted them in this like saved project section of Make Playing Cards that I totally forgot about. And I was like, oh my gosh, I still have all these files loaded. And then when I realized they weren't currently available on her website anymore, I couldn't find the website, I couldn't even remember who the person was who did this. I was like, I better print these because I don't know if I'll ever get a chance. So I went ahead and ordered them printed from Make Playing Cards. So I will keep you guys posted on that. For all I know, I'll even have them before this video gets filmed and you'll have already seen a walkthrough by now. But at the time I'm filming this video, I don't have them. But that's the one I'm excited about instead. That was a very circuitous thing, but we got there in the end. Okay, so next up for Kickstarters I didn't back is the Siren's Melody Tarot. Now, I think somebody in the Supportive Tarot Facebook group actually brought this deck to my attention, and I was like, oh, this is so pretty. As gorgeous as the sample art was that was available on the Kickstarter page, one thing I discovered right away was that it looked like the majority of the art was not yet completed, and that is a deal breaker for me with Kickstarters right now. Unless I know who the creator is and sort of know their their history with putting decks out and that sort of thing, I am very unlikely to back any Kickstarters or Indiegogo campaigns where the tarot card artwork or oracle card artwork is not complete, or at least like 80 to 90% of the way there. I've been talking about this more and more lately, but art is the thing that is most likely to slow down a campaign. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that when it comes to creating a deck that is made up of 78 unique pieces of art, sometimes more, sometimes less. That's a huge undertaking. And I feel like art is one of those things that you really can't rush. So I know that if I back a Kickstarter campaign and like 20% of the art is done, or maybe only the major arcana is done, that I'm going to be waiting probably a long, long, long time. And in those cases, I would much rather just wait until the deck is available. And if I miss out, I miss out. But I just know that I start to lose my patience after like over a year of waiting for a deck. And so I don't want to put myself in that position consciously, particularly unless it is something that I am so excited about and afraid to miss out on that it's worth the hassle and the extra wait. I don't mind a wait. I just know that when the art isn't done, it's much likely to be a much more uncertain amount of time you're waiting. If you're waiting just for production and decks to get printed and shipped and stuff, that's fine. I can wait up to a year, whatever. But if it's artwork, who knows how long it could take to finish. And I think it just is a rabbit hole that I don't want to go down. So anyway, but the colors and the artwork in this deck are so, so pretty. The only thing I could think of from my current collection that sort of is easing the pain of not having backed this deck yet is the Star Seeker Tarot. You guys, this deck is so beautiful. So this was a Kickstarter that I backed. I think I backed it at the end of 2018 or early 2019. Excuse me, at the end of 2019 or early 2020. I actually can't remember. But I got it fairly recently, and this is a beautiful deck. It's matte. I've got one of my hairs on it. Beautiful dusty purple backing. The colors on this deck and the artwork. This is so beautiful. I absolutely love the way the cards are depicted. This scratches my itch for a deck like this. I think Siren's Melody is a lot more pinky purple in its tones, and the art style is totally different, don't get me wrong. But this is the one that I think I would reach for. I love this Judgment card. That I would definitely reach for before wanting to back a deck like that. So that is that. And the last one, this one was actually really hard for me too. I waffled a lot about it, but the last Kickstarter deck that I wanted to back but managed to stop myself is the Cute Cat Tarot. Y'all, this deck is so adorable. And it almost doesn't even matter that I'm more a dog person than a cat person. This deck is so dang cute. It reminds me of all the cute like web comics and things like that that I've looked at. It reminds me of like the comic style of the Oatmeal, or of like Angry Kittens. Is Angry Kittens the game? Yeah, it just, I don't know, it's got this playful, fun energy to it, and I was like, I want that deck. I do want it. But I was like, Lisa, be honest with yourself. How much are you actually going to reach for this deck? Honestly. And I was like, probably not much. Probably not much. But it's so cute. Super cute. So cute. Anyways, so I had to think of something cute in my collection that would make me feel better about not backing the Cute Cat Tarot. And so I pulled out my Happy Tarot, which, let's face it, in the world of cute decks, this Candyland deck is a favorite of mine. Mine is the edition that came with borders, so mine is trimmed. That's what the backs look like, and it's edged in pretty pinks and purples to match the backs. And it's very much the Candyland Tarot deck. I mean, not actually, but it's very much a youthful, fun, gorgeous, shiny world with lots of light and color and candy and playfulness and joy, and I love this deck so much. So if I need to reach for something that's super cute, this scratches the super cute itch. That sounded strange, but hopefully you get the idea. So that, my friends, wraps up all of the things I am not going to buy for this anti-haul. I love doing these videos. They are one of my favorites to film. I say that a lot, but I also like a lot of the things I film. That's why I film them. But anyways, I absolutely love doing anti-hauls. I also love watching anti-hauls. So if you make one, tag me in it or comment or send me the link down below or message me on Instagram and send me the link or something, because I love watching them too. I love hearing why things aren't working for people, what works for them instead. That's my favorite way to approach the anti-haul. Obviously you do you, but I love hearing what isn't working for people, because of course we always hear what's working for people or what we love. I always love sharing what I get excited about, and let's be honest guys, I get excited about pretty much everything. That just is who I am. So it's healthy for me to also take a step back and go, okay, but this doesn't work for me. Here's why, and really just think about that. So I love sharing this with you guys. If you enjoyed this anti-haul, remember to click the little like button down below, comment with some things that you have recently decided not to purchase. Don't forget to share this video with your friends or with groups that you know that enjoy this sort of content, and be sure and subscribe if you're new here. Do all of those good things. Remember that if you want to book a tarot reading with me, or an oracle reading, I do both, you can do that over at supportivetarot.com. Thank you so much for joining me for this anti-haul, and remember, may your magic always shine from the inside out. Bye guys. Hello, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel, and welcome to anti-haul number 6. What is that? And so I like to approach this topic from the perspective of what's not working for me with oh, I just slapped my microphone. So this is where now I don't have cards to show you for what I'm not going to buy, because, well, I don't have them. Also, I just totally kicked my camera. That's cool. I kicked my camera again. What is wrong with me? Okay. I love the matchy-matchiness of it. It makes my organized... Oh, I smacked my chest again. Welp. I'm getting used to a new microphone that clips on. Okay, I need another cup of coffee, and I'm going to have to snip this pit out because I'm about to really vigorously itch my nose. And if I forget, you guys get to see me itching my nose vigorously on my channel. You're welcome. Y'all, there's not enough coffee for this day.